It's the weekend, it's a sunny weekend, and it's the 5th of February 2022. So allow me today to indulge for the space of those few minutes in some British Armenian nostalgia. So welcome to my latest episode, number 30 of Nagorno-Karabakh and Armenian Matters. Now, why did I say nostalgia, and why did I say let me indulge myself for a few minutes in this sense of nostalgia? Because I'm going to focus a little bit on two seminal events, important events, one a bit more important than the other, I would add, that are happening here in the United Kingdom and are very much attached to British-Armenian relations and friendships. The first one, of course, and I would be surprised if you haven't heard anything about it already, is the Platinum Jubilee celebrations of our Queen, Her Majesty Elizabeth II. Those celebrations will be officially forthcoming in the summer of this year in the UK and across the Commonwealth. And they will celebrate 70 years, yes, 7 decades since the accession of Queen Elizabeth II to the throne on the 6th of February 1952. Now, she acceded to the throne upon the death, the sad and painful and sudden death of her father, George VI. And as a lot of commentators, royal commentators have already said, she's the longest serving monarch that this country has had. And her closest competitor is Queen Victoria, who lasted on the throne for 63 years. Now, Queen Elizabeth succeeded King George VI, and King George VI himself had succeeded King Edward VIII. Now, King George VI, Elizabeth's father, was born in Sandringham Estate, which is why the Queen has such an affinity with Sandringham. And his coronation, George VI's coronation, took place in 1937. Now, why am I going back to the father when we are talking about the Queen's Platinum Jubilee? It's because during that coronation in 1937, there were two Armenians who represented the Armenian church and the Armenian community at that coronation. The first was the primate, the church leader of the Armenian Orthodox Church, Archbishop Revant Durian, who was based in Manchester, because at the time the seat of the Armenian Apostolic Church was not in London, it was in Manchester. So he was one of the two attendees of this coronation, Revant Archbishop Durian, and the other one was Father, or as we say in Armenian, Der Khosrov, who was based in London. And they both were what we also call in Armenian Bolsahais. There were Armenians from Istanbul, from Turkey, one in Manchester and one in London. And since then, we've had a number of other church leaders or primates. We've had Archbishop Yerishe Gizirian, we've had Bishop Nathan Hovhannisyan, we've had Archbishop Nathan Hovhannisyan, and not related, and we also have now the incumbent Bishop Joachim Manukyan, as well as two priests who serve the two Armenian churches in London and the oldest one, the historical one, if you want, in Manchester, as well as the satellite parishes that have been created across in Ireland, in Wales, in Guildford, in Oxford, and in Birmingham. Now, let's fast forward a little bit from King George VI and his coronation to the Platinum Jubilee for Queen Elizabeth. The actual date of the anniversary is tomorrow, the 6th of February, Sunday. But the activities, the big shindigs, the joy and all that will be done over a course of 3 days, I believe, in the summer of this year. Now, Queen Elizabeth is really an icon. She's not a make-believe icon. She's not like, we use the word icon quite easily these days. She is not a make-believe or an easy icon. She's a real icon. And in fact, one way of describing her, not using my words, but using the words of Justin Welby, the Archbishop of Canterbury, who was talking about her accession to the throne, he said that she showed, and I quote, duty, leadership, and character. And he also added, because Queen Elizabeth is known for her very strong Christian faith, he added that her Christian faith is the rock on which she stands. Now, of course, anybody, no matter what your politics are in this country, I suspect whether you're a royalist or a Republican or you like the royalty or you don't, this woman has served diligently, assiduously, conscientiously, independently, and inscrutably, I would say, because she has learned not to gossip. She's not a Twitter woman. She's not a Facebook woman. She's not all the other social media platforms. She has kept her counsel to herself and to the few people closest to her. And she really has been somebody, no matter your proclivities, no matter your affiliations, you would say that this is a woman who has served for 70 years and she deserves our respect. And in fact, I would just add a little story about the Queen herself. I haven't had the pleasure or the privilege of meeting her myself. I know some other Armenians in the community have done so, not least actually Archbishop Nathan Hovhannisyan, when he was the primate of the United Kingdom and Ireland in the late noughties, he actually was invited to go to Windsor Palace. He spent the night there alongside 4 or 5 other guests of Her Majesty the Queen. They had dinner there that evening in Windsor Palace, attended, of course, by the host, the Queen, but also by other members of the royal family and some others as well. And then these guests spent the night at Windsor Palace, and the next morning, I remember Archbishop Nathan telling me that he woke up, he had breakfast there, and then the car came and picked him up and brought him back to the Armenian vicarage in London. And I asked him, I said, what's your impression? And he said to me, Harry, she's impressive. And relations between the Armenian community here, whether those who've been born here, 2nd and 3rd generations, or all the Armenian refugees who've come from various different countries, from Iran, from Lebanon, from the Middle East, from other parts of the world, some from Turkey as well, and who've been naturalized or who've become residents of this country. The relationship between the Armenian community as a whole and the UK has been a close and convivial one. So this was my first thought, the Platinum Jubilee. But the Platinum Jubilee also links in quite well with my second thought, which is that a few days ago, on the 20th of January 2022, actually, Armenia and the United Kingdom celebrated 30 years, 3 decades of diplomatic relations. Those relations were established post the independence of Armenia, no longer a Soviet Socialist Republic, but a republic of its own, on its own. The relationships there started in diplomatic terms upon independence. And the first ambassador here was Dr. Armen Sarkisyan, who did actually 2 or 3 stints as ambassador, who also was prime minister in Armenia, and recently, until very recently, actually was president of Armenia, based in Yerevan, but he's resigned, he's left since then, and they're in the process in Armenia of electing a new, or choosing, if you want, a new president. So we've had a list of ambassadors here to the court of St. James from Armenia. I've known some of them far, far better than others. A couple of them I call friends, a couple of them I hardly knew them at all. But it all started, the story of diplomatic relations started, seriously speaking, with Armen Sarkisyan, and then there was Vahran Abadjian, then there was Vahe Gabrielian, followed by Garine Ghazanian, followed again by Arman Giragosyan, and then the incumbent at the moment, who's been here for only a few months, I mean, from summer of 2021, if I'm not mistaken, Varujan Nersesyan. And relations have improved. They are cordial. I wouldn't say that they are the most intimate of relations, but they're quite cordial relations. And those ambassadors have served in different ways. Now, it's interesting here because what I would like to do is post in the description box just one little link. I'm not going to belabor you with too many links this sunny weekend. You're probably going out cycling or enjoying the sun or having a pint of Guinness or whatever. I'm just going to put one link from the Diplomat magazine, which basically talks about the 30 years of relations between Armenia and the UK. And in fact, interestingly enough, the present UK ambassador in Armenia is John Gallagher. And he has spoken quite a bit on social media, particularly on Twitter, about this relationship. And he's also one of many, many ambassadors from the UK serving in Armenia. Actually, I was very, very fortunate to know, and I would almost call him a friend, the first ambassador. We talked about the first ambassador coming from Armenia to London, Armen Sarkisyan. I'll also talk about the first ambassador who went from London to Yerevan, and that was David Miller, a wonderful person, a thoughtful person, quite a tall person. And I had quite a few conversations with him at the time. So John Gallagher, the incumbent ambassador in Armenia, has spoken a lot about the relations and how they are developing in issues of culture, in issues of trade. Of course, there are bumps. Some of the bumps include the fact that the UK government here has not, for instance, yet considered recognizing the Armenian genocide, that there are tensions because of the Nagorno-Karabakh situation, because of Turkish and Azerbaijani influences in the UK. So there are at times tugs of war between different states pulling in different directions. But by and large, I would say that the Armenian community here is active. It's a convivial relationship, and it's a small community compared to other countries, whether in Europe or in other continents. And one thing that I would say, having actually named the ambassadors, the ones that came to memory, I hope I didn't skip any other, the ambassadors who served here in the UK, from Armen Sarkisyan, the first one, to the incumbent Varujan Nersesyan, I also would like to just say one thing. As having done diplomatic studies and having been involved in diplomatic relations, I know that we, and I include myself in this tribe, that we Armenians sometimes tend to cross over from one area to another. In my own mind, there are 3 separate powers, and I'm not going to talk about the separation of powers between the executive, the legislative, and the judiciary. That's the constitutional one. I'm talking about diplomatic relations. And I would say that in my mind, there's a clear distinction between a state and therefore an ambassador who represents the interests of the state, all sorts of interests in the country in which he or she is serving. Then there is the Armenian Church, which is involved with spiritual matters and the spiritual well-being and welfare of its men and women. And then there is the community with all its myriad activities, from the intellectual and cultural to the Armenian street festival, the music, the food, passing by all sorts of conferences and other events as well. And in my opinion, those three sometimes cross over, impinge upon each other. And Armenians seem to think that it's all one happy family, that the state on the one hand, the church on the other, and the community, people who are living in the particular country, all can basically have an opinion about each other's work. And that is something that I have never understood and never agreed with. And in fact, I remember a conversation I had with one of the ambassadors who served in this country, who I actually call a friend. And we were talking about this. And the ambassador told me, you know what, Harry, there is no clear delineation between what is the role of the ambassador, what is the role of the bishop, and what is the role of the chair of the Armenian Community Council. And this is the only thing that I would like to underline here for all the Armenians, whether in the UK, in Armenia, in Nagorno-Karabakh, or elsewhere, who are listening to this episode, which is not directly involved with intra-Armenian or inter-Armenian issues, but rather with British Armenian issues in this particular 30th episode. I would say, please remember, whether it's the bishop, whether it's the ambassador, whether it's the church, the community councillor, or whether it is ordinary people, that each one of those three bodies has a specific role. And mixing those roles, in my humble opinion, cheapens all three. There is no need to mix them. An ambassador has a function, the bishop has a function, the community chair has a function. Of course, they work together. Of course, they inform each other, but they do not actually do each other's jobs. They have their independent jobs. I will leave it at that. This wasn't, don't take it as a criticism, take it as a reflection, as an observation from somebody who's quite long in the tooth and who knows a thing or two about how diplomatic relations and how communities work. So once again, and I'm sure I might come back to it at a later episode, but once again, I would like to say hooray to Her Majesty the Queen, 7 decades serving diligently this country. And I would also say congratulations, shnoravorilla in Armenian, to those 30 years, 3 decades of relations, diplomatic relations between Armenia and the United Kingdom. May they prosper may they prosper more, may they move forward, and may they be better relations in the future, not only on a surface level, but on a much deeper level. And with that, I wish you again a sunny weekend, and I hope that you are keeping safe as we tentatively try to inch out of the COVID pandemic, at least in the United Kingdom. All the best.